The transfer portal is about to get crazy, and I expect the Miami Hurricanes to be aggressive for the second straight year, including at the quarterback position.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and redeem code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. On this loaded episode of Locked On Canes, we're going to talk about the case that Mario Cristobal made this morning. He was on the Joe Rose Show on WQAM, his weekly radio appearance, and Mario Cristobal made the case for Miami to sneak into that college football playoff. We're going to find out. I know it's not technically the final rankings tonight, but we're going to know tonight essentially if Miami is in or out, because we'll see if the committee rates Miami ahead of the likes of Alabama and South Carolina. So this is going to be huge this evening when the new CFP rankings come out. We're going to talk about Miami's final recruiting push. We lost one yesterday, and it stings. Hylton Stubbs switched his commitment. He flipped from Miami to Florida. How's Miami going to close things out beginning tomorrow with National Signing Day? But, guys, I wanted to open up today on the transfer portal because I didn't expect it to start getting this crazy this early. But it's like anytime you log on to social media, or for those who check out the On3s and the 24/7s and, of course, the Rivals, you start to see all these players who are already declaring their intentions to enter the transfer portal, even though the portal doesn't officially open for about another 6 days. So I want to take a look at Miami's needs and Miami's possible wants, all right? We get this question from a Locked On Canes insider called Mopar Mark, who says, hey, going into 2025, where will be the biggest focus on recruiting for the portal? I guess he just means, not high school recruiting, which we will talk about today, but transfer portal recruiting. He says, are we going to try to get another Cam Ward or focus on showing up our lackluster defense? I think the answer to both of those questions is yes. He says the existing quarterbacks on the team, how are they going to be able to fill that role sufficiently on a 1 to 10 scale compared to Cam Ward? How talented are the remaining quarterbacks? I'm not going to compare anyone to Cam Ward because, to me, Ward is one of one, and you can potentially develop or find another very good quarterback, but they're going to do it a different way from Ward. Like, we're probably not going to land somebody with the same sort of escapability, improvisation, pocket awareness and manipulation. Like, we're not going to have another Ward. The question will be, do we find another dual threat type quarterback? Do we develop from within? And this has become a big debate among Miami Hurricanes fans, that do you want to try to stick with development? Because a lot of people are concerned that, hey, if you go out and get another, 1 or 2 year rental, and I hate to even use that word rental, because to me, Cam Ward, one season a Cane, always a Cane. And hopefully Ward's run in Miami is not done, because I want to see Cam Ward get another crack in a Miami uniform in the college football playoff. But people are concerned because a lot of folks, Miami fans, and I think even within, internally, there's a lot of respect and a lot of like for a guy like Emory Williams and the way he's developing, who seems like he would be next up if you stick with the guys you have on the roster. And then, of course, there's concern if you go out, you get another upperclassman transfer, does it scare away guys who are currently in the quarterback room? Is it worth it to try and do that? Now, let me say this loud and clear, and this is just my opinion, but I think that we're seeing evidence to back it up. I am expecting Miami to explore the transfer portal quarterback market. I'm not guaranteeing you that they bring in somebody, because honestly, the right way to do this is do your due diligence, turn over as many stones as you have to turn over, see who hits the portal, see who's receptive to maybe wanting to come to Miami. Now, if you ultimately decide that your options out there, and there might be some great options available, don't get me wrong, but if you ultimately decide that the options available to you externally are not necessarily better or convincingly better than what you already have in the room, I think we reserve the right to take a pass. But I don't think Miami's going to take a pass for the sake of taking a pass. This is just my opinion. I think the Hurricanes are going to explore that quarterback market because we've already heard an instance of them making contact with a quarterback. We'll tell you who that is. But Miami is at least, and obviously making contact with a guy in a portal doesn't necessarily mean you've made him an offer. But we know Miami, it seems like they're at least willing to explore that market. So as far as available quarterbacks go, and you guys have to bear with me because I'm going to throw some names out there who aren't in the portal yet and may or may not actually enter the portal. There are certain players we expect to hit the portal and certain players where it might make sense to make the portal to try to upgrade their situation, find a bigger team to play on. And Miami, I think is very attractive, by the way, to transfer portal quarterbacks because you look at the season that Miami just had on offense. And yeah, not everyone out there is Cam Ward, but you see an excellent offensive line that's going to protect you. It's going to give you opportunities to have some time to throw. Yeah, Miami is losing a couple of their most important wide receivers, but there is talent behind them. You're in a good tight end situation, even though Elijah Arroyo is likely moving on to the NFL. So you've already shown this season it's a quarterback-friendly system. That assumes that either Shannon Dawson stays, and I think he very well might, or, you bring in someone else with similar characteristics. I think Cam Ward showed you that Miami can be a very quarterback-friendly offense, and I think Ward has helped make Miami more attractive for future transfer portal quarterbacks. Somebody that a name that I've been floated a couple of times here who, may become available, and it would make sense because the family is down here. He grew up down here. Cal quarterback Fernando Mendoza. And again, he's not Cam Ward. There is only one Cam Ward, but Mendoza did a lot with not very much at Cal. You look at the season he just had, and he didn't play in every game. He missed, I know one game for sure. I think he missed one game this season. Completed 68.7% of his passes, over 3,000 yards, 16 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Mendoza played very well against Miami for what that's worth. A lot of quarterbacks played well against Miami, of course, but it wasn't just the Miami game. Mendoza played very, very well. And of course, you have the Mario Cristobal connection in addition to the South Florida connection because Mendoza went to Miami Columbus. That's Cristobal's alma mater. Miami didn't offer him a scholarship coming out of high school, but that was the Manny Diaz staff, not the Mario Cristobal staff. Fernando Mendoza is someone who, I wonder if he does hit that portal, if maybe he sees an opportunity to come back home to the South Florida area. A couple of other quarterbacks in the ACC that I wonder about. Now, Tony Calandria from Virginia is already in the portal. That's not really a guy I want, or I don't think he's an upgrade over anybody. So I would say no to Calandria. No evidence that we've reached out to him. I'm just not that big of a fan. Also, Boston College quarterback Thomas Castellanos is in the portal. And this is the one I mentioned at the top that, we've heard reports of at least one quarterback Miami has allegedly reached out to. And this comes from his side of it, not Miami's side of it. But there have been reports that Miami, among, I think, 4 or 5 other programs, have already reached out to Thomas Castellanos. I am of two minds with Castellanos. He is incredibly talented, and he, again, did quite a lot with not a great supporting cast at Boston College, at least not compared to what Miami has. There were some inconsistencies on the field. He's an excellent runner, right? I mean, Cam Ward had the escapability and the athleticism, but was more of a pass-first type of quarterback. Castellanos is more of a 50-50 type guy. You design a lot more running plays for him. He's more of a true dual threat type of guy, Castellanos. I think the concern maybe that I have over him is that he left his team with several weeks left in the season, that when Bill O'Brien decided to bench him and go in a different direction, I don't know exactly what led up to that, to be fair to Castellanos, but the optics are not great when the day after you get benched, you essentially go AWOL and you never return to your team. There was about 3 weeks left in the football season at that point. So I don't think that was the best look. And so this is one of those things where if you do show serious interest in a player, you have to make sure, and Cristobal usually dots his I's and crosses his T's on this stuff pretty well. Same thing can be said for his staff. You need to vet anybody carefully because obviously anytime a player hits the transfer portal, you have to wonder why. Why are they in the transfer portal? How did they handle their exit? Is this someone professional that we can count on? I'm not saying that is or isn't the case with Thomas Castellanos. I'm just saying the optics are not great when you leave your team when there's still weeks left to go in a season. A name that gets asked to me a lot, a couple of more from the ACC before we go to outside the ACC. Kyron Drones at Virginia Tech. I'm sure Virginia Tech will try to get him to stay there because he's their franchise player. But he's got the connections to Cam Ward. He's Cam Ward's cousin. They work out together in the offseason. Ward, I know, speaks very highly of Miami. So, maybe Drones might want to test the portal waters. I wonder about CJ Bailey at NC State. A lot of talent. Chaminade quarterback a couple of years ago had really bright start to his career as a true freshman signal caller this year at NC State. But, he doesn't have the experience that these other names that I mentioned have. Like Bailey is still a little bit more of a project. I mean, he does have 3 years of eligibility left, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. It could be a bad thing if, you really want to bring in and develop a guy like Luke Nickel, for example, who if it's not Emory, if it's not Judd Anderson, who I also really like, but if it's not either of those guys, Luke Nickel is going to be your quarterback for the future. I don't know if you want to bring in somebody in front of him who has 3 years of eligibility left. So that's something you have to think about as well. But, if you were to bring in a CJ Bailey, that might improve your chances for his receiver, Kevin Concepcion, who's in the transfer portal, and I really, really like. Outside the ACC, a name that gets mentioned a ton. There's another Cam Ward connection here. What about John Mateer from Washington State? Followed in Cam Ward's footsteps nicely and put up big numbers there. Great quarterback. The problem that I see, just in terms of how realistic that would be, is if you follow the coaching staff at Washington State, his beloved offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, who's one of these like young wonder coaches, geniuses allegedly, he just went to Oklahoma, and Oklahoma is probably going to be in the quarterback market as well. So, and I agree with James Kane is saying in the chat that Mateer would be a home run. I just feel like it's going to be kind of hard to beat his offensive coordinator who just went to Oklahoma and is probably going to try to lure Mateer in that direction. We got other positions to talk about, guys. I am going to answer more of you guys' questions on the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. We'll go rapid fire. We got some bad recruiting news yesterday, losing Hylton Stubbs. Where does Miami go from here? And will losing Stubbs make Miami more aggressive at a certain other defensive back that's out there that the Canes would love to add to their recruiting class? And we'll talk about the case that Mario Cristobal made for Miami being a college football playoff team. My friends, you want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new live. Smash that like button. We're live on this new episode of Locked On Canes. The GameTime app. This is the only ticket app that I use. I know I'm getting the best prices right up to the start of the event. The prices go down on GameTime. They reward you for procrastinating. Last-minute ticket deals are fantastic. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier, because GameTime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Guys, I love the all-in pricing feature. Shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. I love getting a panoramic view from my seat right there in the app before I buy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the incredible Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hurricanes fans, let me know in the comments if you want to explore big-name transfer portal quarterbacks, or if you would prefer to just focus on the room within and let Judd Anderson, Emory Williams, Reese Poffenbarger, Luke Nickel coming in as a true freshman. Would you prefer to let these guys compete? I do get the sense that, again, and I know Miami had a tough finish to the season. They're still 10-2 at the end of the day. They're still 10-2 with a chance to sneak into the college football playoff. So if you zoom out, it's not nearly as bad of a season as we feel like it is right now. And with that said, I think there's probably a thinking, again, heading into next year that you're going to have an excellent offensive line. You should be really set at the running back position. You're going to have a good, talented group of receivers. You might add a little bit more to that room as well. That you've got an offense that can, again, really shine if you find the right experienced quarterback, and they may not want to waste that kind of talent. Now, I hate to even use the word waste because, again, the young quarterbacks that are already on the roster, we don't know how good these guys are until they get an opportunity to play. But I will also admit that Miami's coaching staff has a much better grasp of what they already have than I do or any of you do. And it does seem like the Hurricanes are going to be aggressive looking for quarterbacks in the transfer portal. Another name at quarterback that I kind of wonder about, because there's a lot of speculation that Quinn Ewers from Texas could hit the portal with a season left. Because again, Texas, it's going to be Arch Manning's third year on the roster next year, and they're ready to turn that page to Arch for a number of different reasons. They want to keep Arch happy. They want to start laying the foundations there for the next couple of years with him. So Quinn Ewers is another one that if anybody out there that says, well, you think Miami could get him? That'd be the biggest name in the portal. Who was the biggest quarterback name in the portal last year? It was Ward, and Miami got him. So never say never. I wonder if that could be an option as well. Let's take a look at some other positions. I think Miami's good at running back, at least with the core. If you have any of like guys who are 3-4 down the depth chart, if anyone leaves, I know we're all wondering about the future of A.J. Allen. Chris Johnson didn't play a whole lot this year. Chris Wheatley-Humphrey didn't play a whole lot, but he's a true freshman. He's still got plenty of time. But in terms of, your top backs, we obviously feel great about a dynamic duo of Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle for next year. I mean, Miami is really good at the top at running back. So I don't see the need to go out and grab, a big name running back. Like Miami needed to grab Damian Martinez this past offseason because they didn't know how healthy Fletcher was going to be to start the year. And they lost Henry Parrish. So Miami needed to grab Martinez. And I thought Martinez slow start, but ended up having a really good year at Miami. But I don't think Miami has that sort of a pressing need again. If you do lose anybody in the portal, maybe you look for some depth pieces. I also think Gerard Pringle, who's coming in as a true freshman, is going to be really good, and he can get some playing time right away. So I think Miami's good at running back. Wide receiver, I think Miami needs to look for a guy or two, an experienced guy. They're losing Jacoby George and Xavier Restrepo. I don't think you need necessarily too much here because, I like everyone else, I want to see JoJo Trader, Nye Carr, Chance Robinson, hopefully Ray Joseph get more opportunities. You're going to have Isaiah Horton back. You'll probably have Sam Brown back. So you've got some talent already in the room there, but not that proven of talent in certain cases. You got Joshua Moore, Malachi Toney, Dalen Upshaw coming in. By the way, Larry Bluestein, we spoke to him on Sunday. He thinks Malachi Toney could be college ready right away, even though he's leaving high school a year early, that dude looks like he's been ready to play already at American Heritage. But I think Miami could go out and get an experienced receiver or two because, and you guys know who I like. I love Kevin Concepcion. KC Concepcion, the Mr. Do-Everything slot receiver from NC State. He is going to be available. He's already reportedly hit the transfer portal, so take a look there. Tight end, maybe you bring in somebody. I do like the up-and-comers in the room, but you're losing Elijah Arroyo and Cam McCormick. Does Cam McCormick have another decade of eligibility? I think you're losing Cam McCormick. I like Elijah Lofton, Riley Williams, Jackson Carver. Hopefully they all stick around. You've got Brock Schott and Luka Gilbert coming in as true freshmen, but I think they could probably use at least one experienced guy to replace the experienced guys who are going out the door at tight ends. The offensive line, I think they're good everywhere except possibly center. Now, maybe Ryan Rodriguez is the full-time center next year. S.J. Olofai-Tuli is young. He's going to be coming in as a true freshman. Nino Francavilla, who I also like, he missed some time injured this year, but I think Miami may go the transfer portal route for the third straight year at center. I think they're good everywhere else. Let's see. Cornerback, yeah. Yeah, we need some corners. We need some safeties. You're losing Daryl Porter Jr., who's your most experienced cornerback. We've got to not only revamp that unit, but add more bodies to that unit. I do think at corner, OJ Frederick and Damari Brown, they could be a dynamic duo. But again, we need more depth. We need more options to compete. Some players Miami is already being linked to, at least in terms of contacting players. Miami has reportedly reached out to Georgia cornerback Julian Humphrey. Miami's expected to compete for Humphrey with Texas A&M, Texas, Oregon, and Alabama. That's according to On3 Sports. Our old pal Antoine Jackson is in the portal. Remember, he signed with Miami. He got out of his national letter of intent. He transferred to East Carolina. Then he transferred to UCF. UCF fires Gus Malzahn. Well, they didn't fire Gus Malzahn. He probably would have been fired, but he left to go to Florida State. Now Jackson's back in the transfer portal. I still like Antoine Jackson. I don't know if that bridge has already been burned too many times. I'm not sure what's going on there, but that is a player who's available. Also, Florida cornerback Jakeem Jackson just hit the portal today. That's a pretty good player. I wonder if Miami's going to take a look. Brian Blades II, Miami legacy. He's going to leave FIU. Well, he might. I don't know if he will, actually. He might not leave FIU in the portal, but he's been a productive player. Obviously at a different level of football at FIU, but, could be a good depth piece there, if nothing else, if he does hit that portal. And, man, safety, I think we need multiple safeties, in my opinion. Although I really hope Zaquan Patterson just goes out there and bosses next year. But you got some safeties available, potentially. Purdue star Dylan Thieneman could be the ultimate get if he hits the portal. His head coach got fired at Purdue. CJ Hurd from FAU, tremendous player if he becomes available. And I'm sure Miami will look at the defensive line as well. There's going to be a lot of needs there, going to be a lot of players available. Miami's losing Simeon Barrow, CJ Clark, Elijah Alston, Tyler Barron, I think Marley Cook, probably Akheem Mesidor as well. So there's going to be a lot of turnover there. Oh, man. All right, folks, when we come back, I want to answer some of you guys' questions from the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. Rapid fire, got some great questions. I usually talk too much, so I'm going to try to answer these questions more quickly than I usually do. And also, guys, again, tonight is a huge night because we got to see, is that college football playoff committee, are they going to value Miami's 10-2 higher than they value Alabama's 9-3, South Carolina's 9-3? So essentially, our playoff fate is going to be almost decided later on tonight, and Mario Cristobal made the case for our Canes getting into the CFP. We will talk about that and so much more. You guys want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Oh, I dropped my earpiece, and we are certainly not done yet, my friends, with FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and it's not too late to get in on all the NFL action with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, $150. You'll get started with that in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure for your next listen, you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack and I'm really hoping that he nudges KC Concepcion in our direction, by the way. Kenton Gibbs and I host that show every single day. We talk about the conference. We take you around everything that's going on. All right, Miami is going to try to stick the landing tomorrow at National Signing Day. And I know, guys, it's been a negative week so far. Miami lost 4-star safety Hylton Stubbs to Florida. He flipped yesterday. There's been some chatter about Oregon flipping Gavin Nix, the 4-star linebacker. To everything I've heard, Miami's really trying to hold on, and that one's not decided yet. We'll probably find out tomorrow whether or not Miami holds on to Gavin Nix. I really hope they do. We'll also find out tomorrow whether or not Miami flips TJ Alford, another stud linebacker who's been committed to Ohio State. Miami's trying to, for the third straight year, pull off an anti-Ohio State flip. The Hurricanes keep on doing that. Hopefully they can keep doing that this year. But yeah, losing Hylton Stubbs, I'm hoping and I'm also expecting that this is going to increase Miami's urgency to try to flip DJ Pickett from LSU. LSU is, of course, doing whatever they can. They've been losing a lot of recruits, by the way. They were losing games down the stretch, but they're doing whatever they can to make DJ Pickett feel like a priority and really milk that great relationship that he has with Corey Raymond, their defensive backs coach. But Miami has not given up. Oregon has not given up with DJ Pickett. But I would hope that, especially after missing out on Stubbs, Miami has renewed motivation and also maybe some extra NIL funds that they were going to use on Stubbs that are available on DJ Pickett. Here's what Steve Wiltfong from On3 Sports said about Pickett this morning. It says 5-star cornerback DJ Pickett is still committed to LSU. He says there's a growing confidence in Baton Rouge that come Wednesday, he'll sign with the Tigers. However, I'm not ready to rule anything out quite yet, Wiltfong said. I know Oregon is still trying to make a move. Miami is surely looking for a last-second splash. Florida is even giving it a run. I guess why not? Florida has flipped like 11 players in the last 2 weeks because they raised all the money for the Billy Napier buyout. They decided not to do that. And so, you can guess where they funneled that money after raising all the Billy Napier money, and they decided to keep him around. There is chatter that he could stay in state, which would be Florida. But again, LSU feels the best right now, better than they felt in a while, is what Steve Wiltfong said about DJ Pickett. And by the way, I heard the comments that Hylton Stubbs made on some awful looking podcast. I'm not going to say it might have been a fantastic. I'm bitter. All right. I don't know if it was an awful looking podcast. It might have been the greatest Gators podcast in the world. It wasn't my guy Brandon on Locked On Gators, I'll tell you that. But he made some comments on some podcast about how he didn't want to be in a bad situation is why he left Miami. He thinks Florida's in a better situation on offense and on defense. Offensively, the numbers say otherwise. Miami actually had better defensive numbers than Florida. Not to mention, you talk about situations. Florida, a month ago, was about to fire their coach. They just went 7-5. They were about to fire their coach. All of a sudden, that's this magically great situation. I'm still fine being a Miami Hurricane. And you know what? We'll find out week 3 on the field because Florida's coming down to South Florida for that game. We'll see what happens. Here is what Mario Cristobal said this morning on the Joe Rose Show about the college football playoff. He says, I think you say the reality, Cristobal said. We won 10 games this year, and not many teams have. Our losses came down to one possession. That's a different resume than the 9-3 teams, he says. Nowadays in college football, you see how the margins are really tight. It's still about winning football games, he says. We can't allow football to become a political nightmare and jockeying for a program when a program hasn't won as many games as another team, he said. The whole myth of this conference and that conference, that stuff has quickly gone away this year, he says. That was very evident in the 8-overtime game in Athens, Georgia. We had a chance to play against the SEC over the last 2 years, and we're 2-0, he said. I coached in the SEC, Cristobal said, and I know what it looked like when Nick Saban was the head coach, and it was dominated by 2 teams at that time. That's not the case anymore. The records show it, he says. There's more legitimate parity now, and the rewards should go to the teams that are actually winning the games and not the ones that are politicking out of the losses, he said. I think that's a great point. Because, again, I know Alabama is Alabama, or they used to be Alabama anyway. I love how Kalen DeBoer just gets to ride on Nick Saban's coattails when it comes to the narratives and the reputation. But, Alabama, I get it. They played an SEC schedule, Miami didn't. But Alabama, they got housed by a bad Oklahoma team. Oklahoma's not a good – I don't care what conference they're in. Oklahoma's not a good football team. Alabama got punked by them 24-3. Vanderbilt had some interesting games. It's not a great football team. Alabama got beaten by Vanderbilt. They've got 3 losses. Miami has 2 losses. Miami's 2 losses are by a combined 9 points against what turned out to be a good Syracuse team who Miami lost to on the road, and a Georgia Tech team that, like Cristobal said, Georgia Tech took Georgia in Athens to 8 freaking overtime. So to me, it's simple. And I know the SEC heads are going to be super pissed off by this. I think Miami should get in to the college football playoff. And if they don't, it's going to come down to that SEC bias and SEC politicking. All right, let me answer some questions rapid fire. We get this one from Stephen C. He says, what's your prediction for the college football playoff handling tonight for us? Stephen, in in a weird way, I feel a little confident that Miami gets some love. And I'll tell you why I feel confident. I keep seeing ESPN projecting Miami to get in as an 11 seed. ESPN are partners with the CFP committee. They tend to say things kind of having an idea of what the committee is talking about and thinking. I don't think it's a coincidence that if ESPN is actually giving Miami in their projections, which don't really mean anything, I just think they know something. If they're giving Miami the nod and not Bama in their projections, that's why I have kind of a sneaky good feeling heading into tonight. But you know what? I'm not going to lose sleep either way. If Miami sneaks in, I'm going to feel fortunate, especially because I get to watch Cam Ward again in a Miami uniform, and I get to see this team have an opportunity. If they don't get in, I will be disappointed, but at the same time, we all know that if Miami had just taken care of business against Syracuse, we wouldn't be in this situation. So if Miami gets in, I'm going to look at that as a bonus. We get this question earlier this season. It was mentioned Shannon Dawson was interviewing for head coaching jobs. Do we expect to return the coordinators? And if not, when do we expect movement to happen on those fronts? I know the Dawson stuff got pretty quiet. I feel like I'm expecting Dawson to stay with Guidry. I don't know. I think he might, he might be held accountable for Miami's defensive lapses this year. I'm not 100. Do we return both coordinators next year? I'm going to say probably not, but we'll see how this plays out. A couple more people asked about Guidry. Ponce says, I feel like recruits may believe that Lance Guidry is on the chopping block and they are deterred by the instability. Your thoughts? That's a double-edged sword, though, Ponce. On the one hand, if there are players out there who think, man, Miami's defense was really shaky and it might be the coordinator's fault, that might deter them from Miami. At the same time, and maybe players who like his system, and he was, and he's not a direct recruiter for anybody. But obviously he's a part of that recruiting process. The position coaches are the ones who are the primary recruiters. But at the same time, if anyone out there, if they're worried about the instability, that could get you, but then they also may be worried about what Miami's defense is going to look like next year. So I think that one's a double-edged sword. It's just not a good, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's not a good position to be in when your defense wasn't good and there are rumors about your coordinator. We get this one from David, who says, any concerns about players not playing if we do happen to make the CFP? No. If Miami makes the college football playoff, I'm not expecting any opt-outs. Every player on this team, that's what they wanted. They wanted the opportunity to play for a college football playoff, and no one's passing up that opportunity. No one's passing that up, because also, if you pass that up before you're trying to get drafted, GMs are going to hold that against you. Like, you opted out of the playoff? That's not going to look good for you. Now, we all know if Miami misses the playoff and they go to a quote-unquote regular bowl game, you could probably expect opt-outs galore, and the NFL people aren't even going to hold that against you. But if you do make the playoff, this is what everyone wants. Everyone wants the opportunity to compete for a championship. Gideon asks us, I love Gideon, how's the team? How are the players and the coaches doing? How's the training going? Are we on the ready line? That is, if Clemson loses and Georgia wins. He says, yeah, another thing, if Miami's going to make the playoff, you really, you need SMU to win, not Clemson. You need Clemson to lose. As far as how the teams, I think that the focus right now is on the recruiting trail and on your fate for the CFP, because unfortunately we don't have an ACC championship game to practice for this week. So the players are probably getting a little rest this week is probably how things are going. We get this question. Hey, by the way, Donno, did you know that Mark D'Onofrio is Al Golden's brother-in-law? Said, I had no idea, and it makes sense why Golden stuck with him for so long. Is that true? It might be. If that is true, I am today years old when I found out that Mark D'Onofrio was Al Golden's brother-in-law. Really? A lot of people right now are hoping that Cristobal is not brothers-in-law with Guidry. I think that's going to be the running joke now. I didn't know that about oh, wow. James Kane says that is true. Now, were they already brothers-in-law when they worked together here, or was that like Jason Taylor, Zach Thomas situation where that happened later on? I would love to. I had no idea. How did I not know that when they were both down here together? That's why I'm wondering if maybe it happened later on. They stayed very close friends, and somebody's daughter married somebody's son, and the whole thing. Oh man. We get this one from David in St. Louis, who says, hey, with the transfer portal becoming such a big part of college football, I'm curious how many Miami players do you think we might see enter the portal this offseason? Well, inevitably you're going to lose. Everybody loses players. Now, I think what we're all concerned about is when you're losing players, are it the guys who either get nudged out because they're not part of the future plan, which is, that's just business. That's life, right? If you get nudged out, or, there's going to be certain players who don't see themselves as part of the depth chart next year, who are going to want to take their talents elsewhere for opportunities to play. Those are the types of guys you don't mind losing as much. I will say that as of right now, I've not heard any sort of a concerning or catastrophic rumor about any of our most beloved players leaving in the portal. So I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope that anybody, and you're going to lose players, but I hope anybody Miami loses are the guys who need to find opportunities somewhere else because they're not getting them here, because that's just life. All right. I mean, you're going to bring in probably close to a dozen players from the portal. You're going to bring in, a recruiting class of about 23, 24 players. You need to make room somehow. All right, I appreciate you guys so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. By the way, I love getting these live updates on Mark D'Onofrio's family tree. He was already Al Golden's brother-in-law when they were at Temple. I didn't know that. Wow. Okay. So I don't know how I went. Maybe I did know that and I forgot. I try to jam way too much stuff into this tiny brain, and there's only room for so much, folks. All right, my friends, I appreciate you guys. National Signing Day tomorrow. It's going to be crazy. We're going to talk about reports, comings and goings, signings. So you want to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Canes. Smash that like button and subscribe on the way out. Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your audio pods. And we will talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.